What would you do if the thing you feared most became your only hope for survival? That was exactly the situation of Phoebe Cruz. She was about to pass out, trapped under 3 feet of compacted snow after an avalanche, her body pinned at an angle that made every breath an agonizing struggle. The Nebraska photographer had come to the Canadian wilderness seeking peace after losing everything that mattered. Instead, she found herself in a frozen trap with severe injuries and an ankle she couldn't feel anymore. Then she heard it. Breathing. Heavy and rhythmic, just inches from her face. Through the small gap in the snow, she saw cream-colored fur and a black nose the size of her fist. A polar bear. Every survival instinct screamed that this was the end. These animals don't rescue people, they hunt them. But this bear wasn't acting like a predator. Why was it? Or was it waiting to strike when she was defenseless? What happened next will leave you speechless and turn this bear into the center of a story the world would never forget. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. We love seeing how far our stories reach. 2 days before the avalanche, Phoebe Cruz sat in her truck at the edge of a gas station parking lot in Whitehorse, staring at the email on her phone for the 15th time. We've decided to move in a different direction. 8 words that had ripped apart 6 years of her life. The photography agency didn't even have the decency to call. Just an email with corporate sympathy and a severance package that wouldn't cover 2 months of rent back in Nebraska. She deleted the email again. It didn't help. The words were burned into her memory the same way Brett's text message was. I can't do this anymore. You're married to your work. That one had come 3 weeks before the layoff, which meant he'd bailed right before everything collapsed. Perfect timing. Phoebe locked her phone and shoved it into the glove compartment. She hadn't come 1,700 miles north to think about Brett, or the job, or the apartment she'd already given up. She came here to remember who she was before everything fell apart. The photographer who'd won awards for wildlife documentation. The woman who used to chase storms and northern lights with a camera and no fear. The Canadian wilderness didn't care about her failures. That's what she needed. She pulled into the ranger station an hour later, mountains rising like frozen giants in every direction. The building was small, weathered wood, with smoke curling from a metal chimney. Inside, a woman with silver-streaked hair and a name tag reading Ranger Callis looked up from a computer screen. Let me guess, Callis said, eyes scanning Phoebe's gear jacket and worn hiking boots. Northern Lights? That obvious? You're the 3rd photographer this week. Callis pulled out a trail map and spread it across the counter. Most folks head to the lower valleys. Better access, clearer skies. Where are you thinking? Phoebe traced her finger along the map to a remote area marked in faded pencil. Here, Blackstone Ridge. I want isolation and altitude. Callis's expression shifted. Not quite a concern, but something close. You're experienced, I hope. 10 years of backcountry work. Trained in winter survival, avalanche safety, wilderness first aid. Phoebe kept her voice steady and professional. She had done this 100 times before. I've got beacon, probe, shovel, satellite phone. 4 days of supplies. Good. Callis nodded but didn't look convinced. I still need to warn you. We've had unusual predator movement in that area. Bears, mostly. A few wolves. Winter prey is scarce this year, so they're ranging farther than normal. Hungrier. You understand what that means? Phoebe understood perfectly. Hungry predators took risks they normally wouldn't. I'll be careful. Careful isn't always enough. Callus circled a spot on the map with red pen. There's an emergency shelter here, about 6 miles in. If the weather turns or you feel unsafe, head there. Don't try to tough it out. Understood. Callus studied her for a long moment, the way people do when they're trying to decide if someone's running toward something or away from something. You going solo? That's the plan. Can I ask why? Because I need to prove I'm not broken. Because I need to remember what it feels like to create something beautiful again. Because if I stay in Nebraska one more day, I'll forget who I am completely. Just need the quiet, Phoebe said instead. Callus sighed and stamped the permit. Stay on the marked trails. Check in every 12 hours with your satellite phone. And if you see a bear, you back away slowly. No sudden moves, no photos. Got it? Phoebe smiled for the first time in weeks. No photos? You're asking a photographer not to shoot a polar bear? I'm asking you to stay alive. Callus handed over the permit. The wilderness doesn't give second chances. 3 hours later, Phoebe stood at the trailhead with her pack secured and camera equipment checked twice. The afternoon sun hung low, casting everything in shades of blue and gold. Snow stretched endlessly in every direction, untouched and perfect. This was why she came. Not for validation or approval or someone else's version of success. For this. The quiet magnitude of nature that made human problems feel small and temporary. She adjusted her yellow beanie, checked her compass, and started walking. The first few miles were exactly what she needed. The rhythm of snowshoes crunching through powder, the burn in her thighs, the sharp, cold air that cleared her head with every breath. She'd forgotten how good it felt to move through wilderness alone, carrying everything she needed on her back, independent, capable, whole. By the time she reached the valley Callus had marked on the map, the sun was sinking behind the peaks, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and purple. Phoebe set up camp near a cluster of evergreens and spent the next hour capturing the light as it died. Each photo felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. The framing, the exposure, the patience to wait for the perfect moment. This was who she was, not the woman Brett left, not the employee they didn't want, the artist who could translate beauty into something permanent. She ate dinner from a freeze-dried pouch and checked in with the ranger station via satellite phone. Everything nominal, weather clear, no signs of wildlife. Expected to reach Blackstone Ridge by tomorrow afternoon. As she settled into her sleeping bag, exhaustion pulled her down fast. The kind of tired that comes from physical work instead of emotional damage. It felt good, clean. Somewhere around midnight, she woke to silence so complete it felt like being underwater. No wind, no animal sounds, just the muffled nothingness of deep winter. She lay there for a moment, listening to her own heartbeat, wondering if she'd dreamed the sound that woke her. Then she heard it again, distant but unmistakable. A low rumble that rolled through the valley like thunder, except the sky was clear and full of stars. Phoebe sat up, breath visible in the frozen air. That sound didn't belong here. Thunder didn't happen in winter. Not like that. She unzipped the tent and looked out into the darkness. The mountains loomed black against the star-filled sky. Everything looked normal, peaceful. But that sound, it had felt wrong, dangerous. She was about to dismiss it as her imagination when the rumble came again, closer this time, and somewhere deep in her gut, below conscious thought, Phoebe's body recognized the sound for what it was, the beginning of something terrible. Before we continue, you and most people watching right now might never see another video from this channel, all because you forgot to subscribe. So please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. It is literally the only way you tell me that the hours researching, writing, and editing these stories was worth it. Now let's get back to the story. The rumble came again at dawn, louder now, pulling Phoebe from restless sleep. She had spent the rest of the night listening for it, jumping at every small sound, but nothing else had come. Morning light filtered through the tent fabric, turning everything pale blue. She convinced herself she'd been paranoid, overthinking, the stress of the past few months making her hear danger where none existed. She broke camp quickly, eager to cover distance. The plan was simple. Reach Blackstone Ridge by afternoon, set up for Northern Lights photography tonight, then spend tomorrow exploring higher elevations. 4 days of shooting, then back to civilization with a portfolio good enough to prove she still had it. By mid-morning, she'd climbed 2,000 feet. The terrain grew steeper, snow deeper, but the views were worth every burning muscle. Peaks stretched endlessly in all directions, untouched white broken only by dark patches of evergreen. She stopped to photograph a formation of ice that had frozen mid-drip from a rock face, crystals catching sunlight like diamonds. This was it. This was the feeling she'd been chasing. Purpose, beauty, control. She checked her GPS. Another mile to the ridge. The slope ahead looked manageable, a steady incline through a corridor of trees with open snowfield beyond. She had crossed terrain like this dozens of times, standard backcountry travel. Phoebe took 3 steps into the clearing before the world cracked apart beneath her feet. The sound came first. Not a rumble this time, but a sharp snap. Like glass shattering in slow motion, she froze, every survival instinct screaming at her to stop moving. But it was already too late. The entire snowfield fractured into geometric patterns, spiderwebbing out from where she stood. She had maybe 2 seconds to process what was happening before the ground simply dropped away. The avalanche swallowed her whole. Falling felt nothing like she'd imagined. There was no slow-motion clarity or time to think. Just violent chaos. The snow moved like a living thing, a monster made of ice and gravity, pulling her down and under. She tumbled head over feet, the sky and ground switching places so fast her brain couldn't track which way was up. Something slammed into her ribs, a branch or rock she couldn't tell, and the air exploded from her lungs. Her pack ripped away, straps tearing. The camera she'd clipped to her chest swung wild and smashed into her jaw. She tried to swim the way they'd taught her in avalanche training. Keep your arms moving. Create airspace. Stay near the surface. But the snow was too heavy, too fast. It pounded her like fists, filling her mouth and nose. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't tell if she was tumbling 10 feet or 100. Then impact. Her body hit something solid and stopped moving. Pain screamed through her left ankle, white-hot and absolute. More snow piled on top of her, crushing down with impossible weight. She couldn't move her legs, couldn't lift her arms. The snow packed around her like concrete, squeezing tighter with every second. And then everything stopped. The roaring ceased. The world went silent. Phoebe tried to breathe and choked on ice, tried to move and felt nothing below her waist. Panic flooded her system, hot and electric, but she forced it down. Think, assess, survive. She was on her side, body twisted at an angle that sent sharp pains through her ribs with every shallow breath. Her face was partially exposed. Some miracle of physics or luck had left a small gap near her mouth. Cold air touched her cheek. She could see a tiny slice of gray sky through the opening. Her left arm was pinned across her chest, but her right arm had some mobility. She wiggled her fingers. They responded, barely. Her legs were completely immobile. When she tried to shift her left ankle, agony exploded up her shin. Definitely broken, or fractured at minimum. The cold hit her next. Not the normal winter cold she'd been managing for days, but the deep, bone-freezing cold of being surrounded by snow on all sides. She could feel it seeping through her jacket, through her base layers, straight into her core. Her teeth started chattering so hard she bit her tongue. The sharp taste of iron filled her mouth. Hypothermia. She was already hypothermic. The shivering meant her body was still fighting, but that wouldn't last. She had maybe an hour before the cold shut her down completely. Her right hand found her chest pocket. The emergency beacon was still there, plastic case intact. Relief flooded through her so powerfully she almost sobbed. She pulled it out with numb fingers, fumbled with the switch, pressed the activation button. The light blinked red. No signal. The terrain was blocking transmission. No! The word came out as a whisper. No, no, no. She pressed the button again. Again. The light just kept blinking red, searching for satellites it couldn't reach. She was too deep in the valley, too far from line of sight. The beacon was worthless. Nobody knew she was here. The ranger expected a check-in tonight, but that was hours away. Even when Phoebe didn't call in, it would take them time to organize a search. They'd start at her last known camp, miles from here. They'd have no way of knowing she'd pushed higher. This was the end. Alone. Frozen. Buried. The thought should have terrified her, but instead a strange calm settled over her body. Maybe this was shock. Maybe her brain protecting itself. She had heard people froze to death, peacefully, once the hypothermia got deep enough. Just fell asleep and never woke up. The cold was numbing everything. The pain was finally fading. The panic was drifting away into a heavy, gray fog. Her vision started to blur at the edges. The gray sky through the gap faded darker. She could feel her heartbeat slowing down, each thump weaker than the last. The shivering stopped. That was bad. She knew that was bad. It meant her body was giving up. Somewhere distant, she thought she heard something. A sound that didn't belong. But her brain was too foggy to process it. Probably hallucinating. The cold did that. Made you hear things, see things. The sound came again. Closer. Rhythmic and heavy. Footsteps. Crunching through snow. Phoebe's eyes snapped open. That wasn't a hallucination. Something was out there. Something real. Something big. Then she heard it. Right above her. So close the sound seemed to vibrate through the snow itself, breathing. Deep and powerful. The breathing of something that could end it all without even trying. The breathing stopped. For 3 heartbeats, there was nothing but terrible silence. Then the snow above her exploded inward as something massive pushed through. A face appeared in the gap. Cream-colored fur, black eyes. A nose the size of her fist, close enough that she could see the moisture clinging to it. The polar bear stared down at her with an intensity that froze her more completely than the cold ever could. Every piece of survival training she'd ever received screamed the same thing. Play dead, don't make eye contact, pray it loses interest. But she couldn't play dead because she basically was dead, and the bear was staring directly into her eyes like it was searching for something. Phoebe's breath came in short, panicked gasps. The bear could end it in seconds. One swipe of those paws, one bite. She was helpless. Completely at its mercy. The bear lowered its head until its nose nearly touched her exposed cheek. Hot breath washed over her face, so warm it melted the ice crystals on her skin. She felt water trickle down her temple. The bear sniffed her hair, her jacket, her face. A low rumble came from deep in its chest, not quite a growl, but close enough to make her heart slam against her broken ribs. Then it pulled back and started digging. The movements were deliberate, controlled, nothing like the frenzied attack she'd expected. The bear used its massive paws to scoop away snow in careful arcs, never coming too close to where she lay pinned. It wasn't trying to expose her. It was trying to free her. Phoebe's mind couldn't process what she was seeing. Polar bears didn't do this. They were apex predators, solitary hunters. They didn't rescue people trapped in avalanches. This had to be shock, hypothermia, her brain shutting down and creating impossible things to comfort her in her final moments. But the snow kept moving. Real, physical. The weight on her chest eased as more ice was pulled away. She could breathe deeper now, without her ribs screaming. The bear worked with an urgency that seemed almost desperate, like it was racing against time. Why? The question burned through her confusion. Why would it help her? The bear paused and looked at her again. This time, Phoebe noticed something she'd missed before. A scar. Crescent-shaped, pale against the cream fur of its shoulder. Old. Healed long ago. Something about that scar tugged at her memory, but her brain was too cold and foggy to make the connection. The bear resumed digging. Within minutes, it had cleared enough snow that Phoebe could move her right arm freely. She tried to lift herself up, to take pressure off her trapped legs, but white-hot pain exploded through her ankle. She cried out before she could stop herself, the sound weak and pitiful. The bear froze, its ears flicked forward, listening. Then, impossibly, it moved closer, lowered itself down, and pressed its massive body against the snow beside her. Warmth flooded into Phoebe's side. The bear's fur was thick and dense, radiating heat like a living furnace. She felt the cold that had been killing her start to retreat, pushed back by the impossible reality of a polar bear sharing its body heat. Her shivering started up again, violent shaking that hurt her ribs but meant her body was still fighting. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The bear huffed, breath steaming in the frozen air. Its dark eyes stayed fixed on the tree line in the distance, alert to something Phoebe couldn't see. Protecting her. That's what it was doing. Protecting her. Tears froze on her cheeks before they could fall. This didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. She was a photographer from Nebraska who'd come here to take pictures and forget her problems. She wasn't special, wasn't worth saving, wasn't worth this. But the bear didn't seem to care about any of that. It stayed pressed against her, radiating warmth and something else. Something that felt almost like recognition? Phoebe's hand moved on its own, reaching toward the bear's fur. She stopped herself halfway. You didn't touch a wild animal, especially not one that could tear you apart. But the bear shifted slightly, moving closer, and her fingertips brushed against its shoulder. The fur was coarser than she'd expected, thick and oily to repel water. Beneath it, she could feel the solid mass of muscle, the raw power that had dug her free. "Thank you," she whispered. The words felt inadequate, ridiculous, but she said them anyway. The bear's ear swiveled toward her, acknowledging the sound, if not the meaning. For a moment, everything felt surreal, like she'd stepped into a dream or a story someone else was telling. A woman trapped in snow, saved by a polar bear, lying side by side in the Canadian wilderness, while the sun tracked slowly across the sky. The warmth from the bear's body was bringing her back from the edge. She could feel her fingers again, her toes, at least the ones on her right foot. The left ankle was still screaming, but the rest of her was coming back online. Her thoughts cleared. The fog lifted. She needed to assess her situation properly, figure out how to get out of here. The bear had freed her torso, but her legs were still pinned. She'd need to dig herself out the rest of the way, and with a broken ankle, that would be nearly impossible. Even if she managed it, she couldn't walk, couldn't get back to camp. The bear's body went rigid. Its head snapped toward the tree line, ears forward. The low rumble returned, deeper this time. Threatening. Phoebe followed its gaze but saw nothing except dark trees and white snow. "What is it?" Then she heard them. Distant but unmistakable. Rising and falling in a chorus that made her blood turn cold for entirely different reasons. Howls, multiple voices. Coming from the forest, coming closer. The bear rose to its feet, snow falling from its fur. It positioned itself between Phoebe and the tree line, body tense and ready. The rumble in its chest became a full growl. Phoebe's heart hammered. Wolves. A pack by the sound of it. And she was trapped, helpless, wounded, with only a polar bear standing between her and teeth designed to end a hunt instantly. The howls came again, closer now, close enough that she could hear the hunger in them. The bear roared, the sound so powerful it shook snow from the branches overhead. A warning, a challenge, a declaration that anything coming for her would have to go through 900 pounds of apex predator first. Through the gaps in the trees, Phoebe saw movement. Gray shapes, yellow eyes. Too many to count, and they were moving fast. Would you trust a wild animal to protect you, or would fear take over? Let us know in the comments, and hit that subscribe button right now, because the battle that's about to happen will leave you absolutely stunned. The first wolf broke from the tree line at full sprint. Gray fur, lean muscle, yellow eyes locked on Phoebe like she was already lost. 3 more followed, spreading out in formation. Hunting formation. Phoebe's breath stopped. This was it. The bear would run. Any animal with survival instincts would abandon an injured human and save itself. She was dead weight, a liability. Why would it stay? But the bear didn't run. It planted itself directly between Phoebe and the approaching pack, dropping into a stance that made it look even more massive than it already was. Head low, shoulders bunched, every muscle coiled and ready. The growl that came from its throat was so deep, Phoebe felt it vibrate through the snow beneath her. The lead wolf slowed, then stopped. Its lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed to end a hunt instantly. The others fanned out wider, circling, searching for an opening. They were testing, calculating, looking for weakness. The bear didn't give them any. It tracked each wolf with precision, shifting its weight to keep them all in sight. When one wolf fainted left, the bear swiveled instantly. When another crept closer from the right, the bear's paw lashed out so fast Phoebe barely saw it move. The blow didn't connect, but the message was clear. Come closer and find out what happens. For a moment, everything hung suspended. 5 wolves against 1 bear. Logic said the wolves had the advantage: numbers, speed, pack coordination. But logic didn't account for the raw power standing guard over a trapped woman, or the fury radiating from every inch of its body. The wolves attacked all at once. They came from 4 directions, a coordinated rush designed to overwhelm and confuse. The lead wolf went high, aiming for the bear's throat. 2 others went low, targeting legs. The 4th circled behind, looking for the bear's hindquarters. The bear met them with violence that took Phoebe's breath away. It caught the lead wolf mid-leap, jaws closing around its shoulder with immense force. Phoebe heard from 10 feet away. The wolf yelped, a sound of defeat, and the bear hurled it sideways into a tree trunk. The animal hit hard and didn't get up, but the other 3 had already closed in. One latched onto the bear's front leg. Another sank teeth into its flank. The 3rd went for the back legs, trying to hamstring and cripple. The bear roared and spun, throwing its full weight around. The wolf on its leg lost its grip and flew through the air. The one on its flank held on longer, finding their mark before the bear twisted and raked its claws across the wolf's face. Dark signs of the battle stained the white snow. Phoebe watched in horror, unable to look away. The bear was fighting like nothing she'd ever seen, not just for survival, but for her. Every move it made kept the wolves away from where she lay helpless. When one wolf tried to dart around toward her, the bear cut it off with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for something so large. But the wolves were landing hits. She could see dark signs of the battle staining the white snow on the bear's shoulder, see the limp developing in its front left leg, see the gash across its back where the pack had struck. "No," Phoebe whispered. "No, please." The remaining wolves regrouped, circling at a safer distance now. They'd learned respect, but hunger was stronger than fear. The injured ones had retreated into the trees, but 3 remained, 3 against 1 wounded bear. And the light was fading. Dusk was settling over the valley, turning everything gray and shadowed. Wolves hunted better in low light. The bear had to know that. One of the wolves darted in, testing. The bear swatted it back, but the movement was slower than before. Tired. The wolf noticed and came again, faster. The bear barely blocked it in time. Phoebe's chest tightened with an emotion she didn't expect. Fear for the bear. Not for herself anymore. For this creature that had chosen to stand between her and the end when it could have walked away, when any rational animal would have walked away. "Run," she said, her voice stronger now. "Just go. Save yourself." The bear didn't even glance at her. Its eyes stayed locked on the circling predators, tracking every shift and twitch, protecting her like she was worth dying for. The wolves attacked again. This time they came smarter. 2 from the front as distraction, 1 from behind as the real threat. The bear caught the front 2, drove them back with snapping jaws and heavy paws. But the 3rd wolf got through. It lunged at Phoebe, jaws open wide, and for one frozen instant she saw the end in its yellow eyes. Then the bear was there. It moved faster than physics should allow, intercepting the wolf mid-leap. They collided with devastating force, bodies tangling and rolling across the snow. The bear got its jaws around the wolf's neck and bit down. The wolf thrashed once, twice, then went limp. The bear dropped the body and staggered. Evidence of the fight dripped from a dozen wounds. Its left front leg barely touched the ground. Its breathing came in harsh, ragged gasps. The two remaining wolves backed away, finally recognizing the fight was lost. They melted into the darkening forest, leaving their fallen behind. Silence fell over the clearing. The bear stood there, swaying slightly, watching the tree line, making sure they were really gone. Minutes passed. 5, 10. Only when full darkness settled did the bear finally lower its guard. It turned and limped back to where Phoebe lay. The movement was painful to watch. Every step cost it. But it came anyway, positioning itself beside her again, sharing warmth, resuming its guard. Phoebe reached up with trembling fingers and touched the bear's wounded shoulder. Her hand came away damp and dark. The bear had taken hits meant for her, had risked everything when it owed her nothing. "Why?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why would you do this?" The bear huffed softly, too exhausted for more. Its eyes drifted closed. But even in its exhaustion, it stayed between her and the forest, protecting her still. Phoebe stared at the magnificent, wounded creature beside her and felt something crack open in her chest. All the pain and failure and loss from the past months seemed small and distant compared to this moment, compared to the reality of a wild animal choosing her life over its own safety. She didn't deserve this, didn't understand it. But as the cold night closed in and the bear's warmth kept her alive, one question burned through everything else. Why would a creature built for survival risk everything for me? If an animal saved your life like this, how would you thank it? Comment below. And if this chapter gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe. The answer to why this bear is protecting Phoebe will blow your mind, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The exhaustion hit Phoebe all at once. Adrenaline had kept her sharp through the attack, but now it was draining away, leaving nothing but bone-deep weariness. The cold pressed in again despite the bear's warmth. Her eyelids grew heavy. She tried to fight it, knowing sleep in these conditions was dangerous, but her body had other plans. The darkness pulled her under, and with it came memory. She was 23 again, working her first real photography assignment in northern Alaska. A wildlife documentation project for a conservation magazine. She'd been so eager to prove herself, so determined to capture something meaningful, the kind of photos that made people care about places they'd never visit. She'd been tracking a female polar bear from a safe distance when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, high-pitched and desperate, crying. Phoebe had followed the sound to a collapsed ice shelf near the coastline. There, wedged between two chunks of sea ice, was a cub. Maybe 6 months old. Small for its age. Its mother was nowhere in sight, probably hunting far out on the ice, unaware her baby had gotten stuck. The cub was panicking, thrashing against the ice that trapped it. Every movement made things worse, wedging it tighter. Dark marks stained the white fur on its shoulder where rough ice had torn through skin, a crescent-shaped wound, deep and jagged. Phoebe's supervisor had been clear about protocol. Never interact with wildlife, never interfere with natural processes. Document, don't intervene. But she was alone out there. The nearest research station was 3 hours away, and the cub was fading fast. She made the choice in seconds. Getting the cub free had taken over an hour. She had used her ice axe to carefully chip away at the frozen trap, working slowly so she wouldn't hurt it further. The cub had fought her at first, terrified, snapping with baby teeth that couldn't quite break skin. But eventually it seemed to understand she was helping. It went still. Let her work. When the ice finally broke away, the cub scrambled backward, then stopped. It looked at her with dark eyes that held something she couldn't name. Not quite trust, but not fear either. Recognition, maybe. Awareness that this human had saved its life. Phoebe had stayed with it for 3 more hours, keeping watch until the mother bear returned. She'd documented everything with her camera, hands shaking from cold and wonder. The reunion between mother and cub. The way the mother sniffed her baby all over, checking for injuries. The way the cub kept looking back at Phoebe, even as its mother led it away across the ice. She had never reported the intervention, had filed the photos under a different project code. Nobody needed to know she'd broken the rules, but she had kept one photo for herself. The cub looking back at her, the crescent scar visible on its shoulder. A reminder that sometimes rules mattered less than doing what was right. That had been 7 years ago. 7 years since she'd seen that cub. 7 years since Alaska. Phoebe's eyes snapped open, her heart hammered against her broken ribs. The bear beside her shifted slightly, and she turned her head to look at it. Really look at it. The scars across its body told stories of survival in one of Earth's harshest environments, but there, on its right shoulder, still visible beneath matted, darkened fur, a crescent-shaped scar, pale and old, exactly where she remembered it. "Oh my God," she whispered. Her hand moved to the scar, fingers trembling as they traced the shape. "It's you. You're the cub. You remember." The bear's eye opened. It watched her with that same awareness she'd seen 7 years ago. Intelligence and recognition, and something deeper. Something that transcended species and language. It had remembered her, through years and thousands of miles. Through growth from a helpless cub into an apex predator. It had remembered the human who'd freed it from ice, and when it found her trapped beneath snow, it had made the same choice she once had. Save a life, even when logic said walk away. Tears streamed down Phoebe's face, freezing on her cheeks. "You came back," she said, voice breaking. "You saved me because I saved you." The bear huffed softly and closed its eyes again, exhausted, wounded, but still here, still protecting her. Phoebe pressed her forehead against the bear's shoulder, careful to avoid the injuries. 7 years ago, she'd broken protocol to save a dying cub. She'd risked her career, her reputation, everything she was building. And she'd never regretted it, never questioned whether it was worth it. Now that cub, fully grown and powerful, had broken every natural instinct to save her in return, had fought wolves, had suffered, had risked its own survival for a human it had no logical reason to remember. But it had remembered. Animals remembered kindness, remembered compassion, remembered the humans who'd chosen to help when they didn't have to. The weight of that realization crushed her. Every failure from the past months, the job, the relationship, the sense of worthlessness, suddenly seemed absurd. She'd spent so long thinking she had no value, that she wasn't worth keeping, that everything she touched fell apart. But this bear disagreed. This bear had risked everything to prove her wrong. "Thank you," Phoebe whispered against its fur. "Thank you for remembering. Thank you for coming back." The forest had gone quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that came before storms, or predators, or other terrible things. Phoebe's breath caught. She lifted her head, scanning the darkness beyond their small clearing. The bear sensed it first. Its body went rigid. The low growl returned, deeper than before, more urgent. Phoebe followed its gaze to the tree line and felt her blood turn to ice. Eyes. Dozens of them, yellow and glowing in the darkness, spread out in a wide semicircle that extended far beyond what she could see. The wolves had returned, but they hadn't come alone. The pack had called for reinforcements. What had been 5 wolves was now 15, maybe 20. She couldn't count them all. They moved like shadows, spreading out, surrounding the clearing, cutting off any escape route. The bear tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Its wounded leg couldn't support its weight anymore. It was exhausted, wounded, running on nothing but will and determination. And the wolves knew it. They began to close in, moving with coordinated patience. No rushing this time, no wild attacks. Just slow, methodical advancement. They could smell weakness, could see the damage, could sense that their prey was finally vulnerable. The bear roared, but the sound was weaker now. A last desperate warning that the wolves no longer feared. Phoebe's hand found a chunk of ice near her trapped legs. She gripped it hard enough to hurt. If the bear was going to fight to protect her, then she'd fight too, even with a broken ankle and pinned legs. Even knowing it was hopeless. The lade wolf stepped into the clearing, eyes fixed on the wounded bear. Then another wolf joined it. Another. The bear braced itself for the fight it might not survive. And Phoebe realized with crushing certainty that this magnificent creature that had saved her life was about to give everything to protect her. Have you ever had someone, or something, remember a kindness you showed them years later? Let us know in the comments. And if you're on the edge of your seat right now, hit subscribe, because what happens in the next will leave you absolutely speechless. The wolves didn't charge. They advanced like water, flowing forward in a coordinated wave that tightened the circle with every step. The bear shifted its weight, trying to compensate for the injured leg. But even from where Phoebe lay, she could see the tremor running through its body. Exhaustion. Pain. The lade wolf took another step, then another, testing, waiting for the moment when the bear's strength finally gave out. Phoebe's fingers closed around the chunk of ice in her hand. It wasn't much, barely a weapon, but it was something. She wouldn't lie here helpless while this bear gave everything protecting her. The wolves attacked as one. They came from all sides, a blur of gray fur and snapping jaws. The bear met the first 3 with a roar that shook Phoebe's chest, but the sound was ragged now, desperate. Its paw caught one wolf across the face, sending it tumbling backward with a yelp. But 2 more got through, latching onto the bear's already wounded shoulder. The bear thrashed, trying to shake them off. One wolf lost its grip and flew sideways. The other held on. The grip was unrelenting. Dark marks stained the bear's leg. "No!" Phoebe screamed. She hurled the ice chunk as hard as she could. It hit a wolf approaching from the right, striking its ribs. The wolf yelped and stumbled, more from surprise than pain. But it was enough. The animal hesitated, confused about this new threat. Phoebe grabbed more ice, more snow, anything within reach. She threw it all, screaming, making noise, creating chaos. The wolves closest to her kept glancing back, uncertain whether to focus on the bear or this human who was suddenly fighting back. "Come on!" Phoebe shouted, her voice raw. "You want her? You go through me too!" A wolf broke from the pack and lunged at her. Phoebe's heart stopped. She had nothing left to throw, no way to defend herself. The wolf's jaws opened wide, teeth aimed at her exposed face. The bear intercepted it mid-leap. Jaws locked onto the wolf with immense power. The wolf didn't even have time to yelp. The bear shook it once, violently, then dropped the limp body. But the effort cost it. The bear's front leg buckled. It caught itself before falling completely, but barely. 3 wolves saw the opening and rushed in together. Phoebe screamed warnings, threw more snow, anything to distract them. One wolf veered toward her, confused by the noise. That was all the bear needed. It lunged despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, and caught the wolf by its back leg. The impact was brutal. The wolf shrieked. The other 2 wolves got through the bear's defense. One bit down on its hindquarters. The other went for the throat, leaping high. The bear twisted at the last second, taking the bite on its shoulder instead. It roared in agony and threw its full weight sideways, pinning the wolf beneath it. The animal squirmed free and limped away, ribs clearly broken. The wolf on the bear's hindquarters released and backed away, finally reading the same message the others were learning. This fight wasn't worth it. The wolf on the bear's hindquarters released and backed away, finally reading the same message the others were learning. This fight wasn't worth it. The bear was wounded and tired, but it was still driving them back, still winning. The remaining wolves, maybe 8 or 9 now, circled at a safer distance. Phoebe could see the calculation in their movements. They were pack animals, smart. They knew when prey cost too much. The lead wolf held its ground for another moment, yellow eyes locked on the bear. A final test of will. The bear stared back, battered and swaying, but refusing to yield. The wolf turned and melted into the forest. The others followed, disappearing into darkness like they'd never been there at all. Only the bodies of their fallen remained, scattered across the snow, marking the battle. Silence fell, heavier than before, final. The bear stood there, sides heaving, bearing the heavy toll of the battle. It watched the tree line for a long time, making sure the threat was truly gone, making sure Phoebe was safe. Then its legs gave out. The bear collapsed beside her, hitting the snow hard enough that she felt the impact through the ground. Its breathing came in harsh, ragged gasps. The shaking started immediately, violent tremors that ran through its entire body. "No, no, no," Phoebe whispered. She reached out with both hands, pressing them against the bear's side. Its fur was matted and damp, warm and sticky. "Please don't go. Please, you can't leave, not after all this." The bear's eye cracked open, finding her face. Even now, even dying, it was checking on her, making sure she was okay. Phoebe felt something break inside her chest. This creature had given everything, had fought impossible odds, had bled and suffered and nearly died, all for a human who'd once freed it from ice. The kindness she'd shown 7 years ago had echoed forward through time and space, returning in the form of this wounded, magnificent animal who'd chosen her life over its own. "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming. "I'm so sorry." "You shouldn't have to do this. You should have run. You should have saved yourself." The bear huffed weakly, breath steaming in the cold air. Its body was still shaking, but it shifted closer to her despite the pain, still trying to share warmth, still protecting. Phoebe moved her hands to the bear's massive head, fingers sinking into thick fur. This was the first time she'd touched it intentionally, with purpose and permission. Not an accidental brush, but a conscious gesture of trust and gratitude. The bear's fur was coarser than she'd expected, but warm, alive. She could feel the pulse beneath her fingers, strong despite everything. "You saved me," she whispered. "7 years ago, I saved you. And you came back. You remembered. You risked everything to return the favor." The bear's eye closed. Its breathing began to slow, evening out. The violent shaking eased to occasional tremors. Phoebe kept her hands on its head, stroking gently, offering what little comfort she could. The night stretched on, impossibly long. The cold pressed in from all sides, but the bear's body still radiated warmth. Still held on. Phoebe talked to it, keeping her voice low and steady. She told it about Alaska, about the day she'd found the trapped cub, about the choice she'd made to help, even when it broke the rules. "I thought I made a mistake," she said softly. "I thought maybe I'd interfered with something I shouldn't have. But I was wrong. That choice mattered. It changed everything. It brought you back to me when I needed you most." The bear's breathing deepened. Sleep or unconsciousness, Phoebe couldn't tell. But it was alive. Still alive. She pressed her forehead against the bear's shoulder, careful to avoid the worst wounds. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for remembering. Thank you for caring. Thank you for showing me that kindness matters, that I matter." The words hung in the frozen air, truth she hadn't been able to speak for months. She did matter. Her choices had value. The bear had proven it by risking everything to save her. Above them, stars began to pierce through gaps in the clouds. The northern lights flickered at the horizon, pale green ribbons dancing against black sky. The sight Phoebe had come here to photograph. The beauty she'd been chasing. But none of it compared to this moment, to the feeling of this bear's heartbeat beneath her hands, to the knowledge that life was about more than success or failure. It was about connection. About the echoes of kindness that rippled forward through time. The bear shuddered once more, a full-body tremor that made Phoebe's heart stop. Then it went still, completely, terrifyingly still. "No," Phoebe breathed. "No, please, stay with me, please stay." She pressed her ear against the bear's chest, desperate to hear something. Anything. And there it was. Faint but steady. A heartbeat. The bear was still alive. Barely. But alive. Before we continue, you and most people watching right now might never see another video from this channel. All because you forgot to subscribe. So please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. It is literally the only way you tell me that the hours researching, writing, and editing these stories was worth it. Now, let's get back to the story. The temperature dropped as midnight approached. Phoebe felt it in her bones. The kind of cold that stopped being just uncomfortable and started becoming lethal. Her breath came out in thick clouds that froze before dissipating. The bear's breath did the same, though each exhale was shallower than the last. She pressed herself closer to its body, seeking warmth and giving what little she had in return. The bear's fur was still damp with the aftermath, but beneath it, heat radiated like a furnace running on its last reserves. They were keeping each other alive now. Two wounded creatures sharing the only resource that mattered. "Stay with me," Phoebe whispered, her lips so numb the words barely formed. "We're going to make it through this. Both of us. I promise." The bear didn't respond, didn't move, just kept breathing, slow and steady. Alive. Hours crawled past. Phoebe's sense of time fractured, each moment stretching into eternity. She had lost feeling in her trapped left leg completely, which terrified her more than the pain had. She tried wiggling her toes and felt nothing. Frostbite was setting in. Even if rescue came, she might lose the foot. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight was just about surviving until dawn. The stars overhead were brutally bright, indifferent to the suffering below them. Phoebe stared up at them, thinking about how small she was, how insignificant. A woman trapped under snow in the middle of nowhere, kept alive by a polar bear who should have killed her. The universe didn't care. The stars didn't care. But somehow, impossibly, this bear did. "I lost my job," she said into the darkness, her voice cracking. 2 months ago, they said I wasn't what they needed anymore. Just like that. 6 years, and they erased me with an email. The bear's ear twitched. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. Phoebe kept talking. "And Brett left me 3 weeks before that. Said I was married to my work, that I never had time for him. Which was probably true, but it still hurt. Made me feel like I was failing at everything. Work, love, life." Her throat tightened. She hadn't said these words out loud to anyone, hadn't admitted how completely she'd fallen apart. But here, trapped beneath snow with a dying bear, the truth felt safe. There was no judgment in those dark eyes. No disappointment. "I came here to prove something," Phoebe continued. "To prove I was still good at what I do, that I still had value. But the truth, I was running away. From the failure. From the loneliness. From feeling like I didn't matter to anyone." A tear slid down her cheek and froze instantly. She brushed it away with numb fingers. "You know what's funny? I thought success was the only thing that mattered. Getting the shot, making the sale, keeping the job. But none of that means anything right now. All that matters is this. You and me, keeping each other alive. That's more real than any paycheck or award or relationship that fell apart because I cared about the wrong things." The bear shifted slightly, and Phoebe felt its massive head settle closer to hers. The movement was deliberate, intentional, comforting. "You remembered me," she said softly. "After 7 years, you remembered. And you came back. You risked everything because I showed you kindness once. That matters more than anything else in my entire life. Do you understand? You made me matter again." Her hand found the bear's uninjured shoulder, fingers tangling in thick fur. The bear was more than a wild animal now, more than a predator or a force of nature. It was a companion, a friend, someone who'd chosen to stay when everything else in Phoebe's life had walked away. "I'm sorry I wasted so much time being afraid," she whispered, "afraid of failing. Afraid of not being enough, afraid of being alone. But you're not afraid, you just are. You exist and survive and protect and remember. You don't need validation or approval. You're just authentically yourself." The bear huffed softly, breath warming her face. Phoebe smiled despite everything. "Yeah, I know I'm getting philosophical. Hypothermia will do that." She paused, listening to the steady rhythm of the bear's breathing. "But I mean it. You've taught me more in one night than I've learned in 30 years. Kindness matters. Connection matters. Being brave enough to help someone else, even when it costs you everything. That's what makes life worth living. The cold pressed deeper, creeping into her core. Phoebe knew she was in trouble. Knew the bear was too. They'd fought so hard, survived so much, but the cold was patient, relentless. It would take them eventually if help didn't come. "I don't want to die," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought I didn't care, back in Nebraska. Thought maybe it would be easier to just fade away. But I was wrong. I want to live. I want to tell people about you. About what you did. About how an animal remembered kindness and came back to save the person who'd helped it." She pressed her forehead against the bear's neck, feeling the pulse there. Strong, stubborn, refusing to quit. "We're going to make it," Phoebe said with more conviction than she felt. "Both of us. We didn't survive wolves and avalanches and freezing just to give up now. Tomorrow someone will find us. Tomorrow we go home." The bear's breathing deepened, settling into something that might have been sleep or might have been unconsciousness. Phoebe couldn't tell anymore. Her own thoughts were getting fuzzy, drifting. The cold was winning. She talked anyway, rambling now about Alaska and photography and the northern lights dancing overhead, about her parents and childhood and the dog she'd had growing up. Anything to stay awake. Anything to keep the darkness at bay. "Your mother came back for you," she said drowsily. "That day on the ice. I watched her find you. She was so worried. She checked you all over, making sure you were okay. And you kept looking back at me, like you wanted her to know. Like you were saying, that human helped me. Remember her." Phoebe's eyes drifted closed. She forced them open, closed again. Open. The effort was getting harder. "I'll remember you too," she whispered. "For the rest of my life, however long that is. I'll remember the bear who came back." The stars blurred overhead. The cold felt distant now, almost comfortable. That was bad. She knew that was bad. But fighting it took energy she didn't have. The bear's warmth surrounded her like a blanket. She let herself sink into it, just for a moment. Just to rest. Then the wind picked up, sharp and sudden, cutting through the clearing like a knife. Phoebe's eyes snapped open. The stars were disappearing, swallowed by darkness that rolled across the sky too fast to be natural. Clouds, thick and heavy, moving with terrifying speed. The first snowflake hit her face, then another. Within seconds, the air was full of them, a wall of white that erased everything beyond 5 feet. The storm had returned, and this time it was bringing everything it had. The storm raged through the night with brutal intensity. Snow fell so thick, Phoebe couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. Wind screamed through the clearing, piling fresh drifts over the bodies of fallen wolves, over the blood-stained ground, over Phoebe and the bear huddled together in their frozen refuge. Findubber's Toby drifted in and out of consciousness, losing track of time. Sometimes she was aware of the cold. Sometimes she felt nothing at all. The bear's warmth was the only constant, the only thing tethering her to life. She pressed against it, and it pressed back, 2 creatures refusing to surrender. Somewhere in the darkest hours before dawn, something shifted. Not the storm, that continued its assault without mercy, but the snow beneath Phoebe. The compacted drift that had trapped her for nearly 2 days suddenly gave way, settling under the weight of fresh accumulation. Her legs shifted. The pressure on her fractured ankle eased slightly, and her emergency beacon, which had been pressed against her chest and blocked by terrain, rotated outward. The small device found a gap in the snow, its signal suddenly clear and unobstructed. Phoebe didn't know. She was too far gone to notice the red light that had been blinking uselessly for hours suddenly turned solid green. Transmitting. Broadcasting her location to satellites that relayed the distress call to the ranger station 50 miles away. The storm began to break around 5 in the morning. The wind died first, then the snow tapered to scattered flakes. Gray dawn light filtered through the clouds, weak but present. The world came back into focus slowly, like a photograph developing. Phoebe opened her eyes. Everything hurt, her ribs, her ankle, her hands and feet. But she was alive, still alive. The bear's side rose and fell against hers, breathing ragged but steady. Still alive, too. "We made it," she whispered, the words cracking through the frozen lips. "We made it through the night." The bear's eye opened, tracking to her face. Recognition flickered there. Awareness. It huffed once, breath steaming in the morning air. Then Phoebe heard it. Distant at first, but growing louder. A mechanical sound that didn't belong in the wilderness, a rhythmic beating that sent hope surging through her exhausted body. Helicopter. "They're coming," she said, gripping the bear's fur. "Help is coming, we're going to be okay." The sound grew louder, closer. The bear's head lifted, ears swiveling toward the noise, its body tensed. Phoebe could feel the shift from exhausted companion to alert predator in seconds, instinct overriding everything else. "It's okay," she said quickly. "They're here to help. They won't hurt you." But the bear was already struggling to stand, legs shaking with effort. It positioned itself between Phoebe and the approaching sound, protective even now. Even wounded and exhausted beyond measure, its first instinct was to guard her. The helicopter appeared over the tree line, red and white against gray sky. It circled once, then began its descent into the clearing. The rotor wash sent snow swirling in blinding clouds. The bear roared, the sound barely audible over the mechanical thunder. "Don't shoot!" Phoebe screamed, though she knew they couldn't hear her. "Don't hurt it. Please don't hurt it!" The helicopter touched down 30 yards away. The rotors kept spinning, kicking up more snow. 2 figures jumped out, bundled in heavy rescue gear. They started toward her, then stopped dead. Even from a distance, Phoebe could see their shock. One reached for something on their belt, defensive gear, a tranquilizer gun maybe, or worse. "No!" Phoebe shouted with everything she had left. "Don't shoot! It saved me! It's protecting me!" One of the rescuers, Ranger Adam, Phoebe realized with a jolt, raised a hand, signaling her partner to hold. She took a cautious step forward, then another. The bear tracked her movement, growling deep in its chest, warning her to stay back. "Phoebe," Adam called out. "Are you injured? Can you move?" "My ankle's broken. I'm trapped." But the bear, Phoebe's voice broke. "Please don't hurt it. It saved my life. It fought wolves. It kept me warm all night. Please." Adam exchanged a look with her partner. They were trained for wilderness rescue, prepared for injuries and exposure and even animal encounters. But this? A woman trapped under snow, protected by a wounded polar bear? This wasn't in any manual. "We need to get you out," Adam said, voice steady and professional. "But we can't do that with the bear this close. Can you tell it to back away?" "It doesn't understand English," Phoebe said, almost laughing at the absurdity. "But it understands me. It knows I saved it once, years ago, in Alaska. This is the same bear. It remembered." The second rescuer, A younger man whose name tag read Torres shook his head. That's impossible. Bears don't— I'm looking at it, Phoebe interrupted. It remembered, and it came back. The helicopter's rotors increased speed, preparing for quick evacuation. The sound grew deafening. The bear's head swung toward the machine, then back to the approaching humans. It was overwhelmed, confused, every instinct screaming danger. Phoebe reached up, fingers finding the bear's leg. It's okay, she said, knowing it could hear her even if the rescuers couldn't. You did your job. You saved me. Now you need to save yourself. Go, please, before they hurt you. The bear looked down at her. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Woman and bear, human and wild, connected by something deeper than species or language, connected by remembered kindness and returned compassion. Go, Phoebe whispered, tears streaming. Thank you for everything. But go. The bear turned its head towards the forest. The rotors were too loud now, the humans too close. Every wild instinct was telling it to run, to escape, to survive. It took one step away from Phoebe, then another, then stopped and looked back, just like it had 7 years ago when its mother had led it across the ice. One final look, one final moment of connection. Then it turned and limped into the trees, moving fast despite its injuries. Within seconds, the forest swallowed it completely, like it had never been there at all. Wait! Phoebe screamed. Come back! I didn't get to say— But it was gone. The bear was gone. The rescuers rushed forward, Torres already on his radio calling for medical equipment. Adam dropped to her knees beside Phoebe, eyes scanning for injuries. We've got you. You're safe now. We're going to get you out. The bear, Phoebe said weakly. You can't track it. You can't hurt it. Promise me. Adam glanced at the trampled snow, the dead wolves, the massive paw prints leading into the forest. We're not here for the bear. We're here for you. They worked quickly, clearing snow from her trapped legs with practiced efficiency. Torres administered pain medication while Adam stabilized her ankle. Within minutes, they had her on a stretcher. Within 20 minutes, they were loading her into the helicopter. As the aircraft lifted off, Phoebe pressed her face against the window, searching the tree line desperately, looking for cream-colored fur, for dark eyes, for any sign of the creature that had saved her life. But the forest remained empty, silent. The bear had vanished into the wilderness it called home, leaving nothing behind but tracks in the snow and a story no one would believe. Except Phoebe knew the truth, and she would carry it with her for the rest of her life. The helicopter banked and turned south, carrying her toward hospitals and questions and a world that had continued spinning without her. Below, the clearing grew smaller. The battlefield, the wolves, the place where she'd almost died and been saved by impossible compassion. She searched the trees one last time, her heart breaking, and there, barely visible at the edge of the forest, she saw it. A flash of cream-colored fur, a massive shape watching from the shadows. The bear had stayed. It had waited to make sure she got away safely. Their eyes met across the impossible distance. One final connection, one final goodbye. Then the helicopter climbed higher, and the forest disappeared beneath clouds, and the bear was truly gone. If you could say one thing to someone who saved your life, what would it be? Drop it in the comments. And if this rescue scene had you emotional, hit that subscribe button, because very soon you will learn that some bonds never truly break, even when separated by miles and time. The hospital in Whitehorse smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Phoebe spent 3 days there, enduring surgeries on her fractured ankle, treatment for frostbite that cost her 2 toes on her left foot, and endless questions from doctors amazed she'd survived it all. Her broken ribs would heal on their own, they said. The hypothermia could have killed her. The fact that she was alive was nothing short of miraculous. They didn't know the half of it. The news crews showed up on day 2, local stations first, then national outlets. Woman survives avalanche and wolf attack in Canadian wilderness made headlines across North America. Reporters camped outside her hospital room, desperate for interviews. They wanted details. Drama. The survival story that would go viral and rack up millions of views. Phoebe refused them all. She told the doctors and rangers only what they needed to know. The avalanche, being trapped, the wolves. But when they asked how she'd survived the night in sub-zero temperatures with a broken ankle, she kept her answers vague. Adrenaline. Luck. The will to live. She didn't mention the bear, not once. Ranger Adam and Torres had seen it, of course. They'd filed reports about the polar bear at the rescue site, the fallen wolves, the battle-scarred clearing. Wildlife officials launched an investigation concerned about aggressive predator behavior so close to hiking trails. They wanted to track the bear, tranquilize it, relocate it, or, if necessary, remove it. Phoebe lied to protect it. Told them the bear had shown up after the wolves left, that it had been scavenging, not protecting, that it had run the moment the helicopter arrived. She made herself sound confused, traumatized, unreliable. Made them doubt what they'd seen. Eventually, they stopped asking. Wrote it off as a strange wildlife encounter with no clear explanation. The bear disappeared into the bureaucratic cracks. Just another mystery of the Canadian wilderness. Phoebe was released on day 5 with crutches, a walking boot, and strict orders to stay off the injured foot for 6 weeks. Her insurance would cover the medical bills barely. Her camera equipment was gone, lost in the avalanche. Her professional portfolio was still empty. She had no job to return to, no apartment waiting, no relationship to salvage. She had nothing except the memory of a bear who'd remembered her kindness and returned it when she needed it most. The months that followed were quiet. Phoebe moved into a small rental in Whitehorse, close enough to the wilderness that she could see the mountains from her window. She took a part-time job at a local outdoor outfitter, selling gear and leading occasional photography workshops for tourists. The work was simple, honest. It paid enough. She didn't chase success anymore, didn't measure her worth by contracts or awards or social media followers. She'd learned something more important in that frozen clearing, something that no amount of professional achievement could teach. Connection mattered more than accomplishment. Compassion mattered more than recognition. And kindness, even the smallest gesture, could echo forward through time in ways you'd never imagine. By late spring, when the snow had melted and her ankle had healed enough to hike again, Phoebe made a decision. She bought supplies: high-quality seal meat, fish, protein-rich food that polar bears needed. She packed it carefully, along with her new camera, a GPS tracker, and emergency gear she swore she'd never travel without again. Then she went back to Blackstone Ridge, back to the clearing where she'd almost died. The avalanche scar was still visible, a bare patch on the mountainside where new snow hadn't yet accumulated. The clearing looked different in daylight, smaller somehow. But she found the spot where she'd been trapped, found the trees where the bear had fought, found the places where wolf bodies had fallen. Nature had reclaimed most of it. But the memory remained, vivid and permanent. Phoebe set up camp a safe distance away and spent 3 days there. She left food caches in strategic locations, places bears might find them without connecting them to humans. She photographed the landscape, documenting the habitat with respectful distance. She watched for signs of the bear, tracks, scat, disturbed vegetation, but found nothing conclusive. On the 3rd evening, as the sun set behind the peaks and painted everything gold, Phoebe sat at the edge of the clearing and spoke to the wilderness. "I don't know if you're out there," she said quietly. "I don't know if you can hear me, or if you'd even remember me now, but I wanted to come back. I wanted to say thank you properly for saving my life, for showing me what matters, for proving that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing in the world." The forest remained silent. No cream-colored fur appeared. No dark eyes watched from the shadows. But Phoebe felt something anyway. A presence, a knowing, the sense that she wasn't entirely alone. "I'm going to keep coming back," she continued, "not to find you or disturb you, just to make sure you're okay, to leave food when hunting is scarce, to protect this place so you always have somewhere safe to be." A breeze moved through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and snow and wild things. Phoebe closed her eyes and breathed it in. "7 years ago, I made a choice," she said. "I broke the rules to save a trapped cub because it was the right thing to do. I never expected anything in return, but you remembered, and when I needed saving, you came back. You risked everything for me." Tears slid down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "That means more than anything else in my entire life, more than any job or relationship or achievement. You showed me that compassion matters, that connection matters, that the kindness we put into the world comes back to us, not always in ways we expect, but when we need it most." The sun touched the horizon, turning the sky purple and orange. Phoebe stood, shouldering her pack. It was time to head back to camp, back to civilization, back to the small life she'd built from the ruins of her old one. But she paused at the tree line and looked back one last time. Movement caught her eye. There, at the far edge of the clearing where forest met open snow, a shape emerged. Large, powerful, unmistakable. The bear. Phoebe's breath stopped. It stood there, maybe 100 yards away, watching her. The crescent scar on its shoulder was visible even from this distance. It had survived, healed, thrived. They stared at each other across the space between wild and human, predator and prey, past and present. No threat, no fear, just recognition, just remembering. The bear huffed once, breath visible in the cooling air. Then it turned and disappeared back into the forest, leaving Phoebe alone with the certain knowledge that some bonds transcend species, transcend time, transcend logic itself. She wiped her eyes and headed back to camp, her heart full in a way it hadn't been in years, maybe ever. The story would never make the news. She'd never tell reporters or write a book or capitalize on the miracle that had saved her life. Some things were too sacred for that, too private, too precious. But she would come back. Every season, every year. She would protect this place and leave provisions and watch from a distance. She would honor the bear that had honored her. She would live proof that compassion mattered, that kindness echoed, that the smallest acts of mercy could ripple forward through time and return when we needed them most. Because in the end, that was the only truth that mattered, the only lesson worth learning. Kindness stays alive longer than memory. It grows and transforms and comes back to us in forms we never expected. Sometimes as a second chance, sometimes as salvation, sometimes as a polar bear who remembers. And that was enough. More than enough. That was everything. If this story touched your heart, then we need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button, because stories like this take time, research, and heart to create. And your support means we can bring you more incredible, true tales of survival, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and the wild. Smash that like button if you believe kindness matters. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that compassion always comes back to us. And let us know if you would have saved that cub 7 years ago, even if it meant breaking the rules. We read every single comment. Your words fuel our mission to share these powerful stories. Don't just scroll past. Be part of the community that believes in the good that exists in this world, even in the wildest places. Subscribe now, like now, share now, because stories this powerful deserve to be heard by everyone.